Hi, welcome to Mr. Otter Studio. Today I'm going to show you 4 watercolor pencil techniques. Even though I'm saying I'm showing you 4 techniques, I'm actually going to be showing you about 9. But they're basically just variations on these 4 techniques. If you want to learn how to use watercolor pencils, this is a great tutorial to watch. Also, if you're just curious to see how watercolor pencils work. We're going to be using a set of watercolor pencils. Use whatever set you have. You only need really 2 colors to do all of these techniques. You do need some paintbrushes, and I'm going to show you a technique using this flat brush, and this round brush is the one that we're going to be using most of the time. We're going to be drawing 10 squares. You can use tape to mask 10 squares or a pencil to draw 10 squares. You could also just use one of your watercolor pencils as well. Paper towel, water, and I'm going to be showing you a technique using sanding paper. So this is just some sandpaper, any kind will do. And the last thing I forgot to mention is watercolor paper. So grab some watercolor paper. The first thing I want you to do is to divide your paper into 10 different spaces. Some could be bigger, some could be smaller. They do not need to be perfect. I'm just using tape because it's the fastest way for me to do it. So however you divide your paper up, just make sure, you can even draw these spaces in. Make sure you have 10 spaces to fill with watercolor pencil techniques. So I just divided mine into 4 and then just divided one in half. So however you want to divide this up, you decide, just make sure you have 10 spaces. The first technique is where you draw with the watercolor pencil on your paper first and then you add water. And I'm going to show you 4 different ways to do it. So choose those 4 squares. They could be by each other, they don't have to be by each other. So the first one we're going to do is a solid color. So grab one of your colors and just go ahead and fill in one of the squares. The harder you press, the darker your color will be. And remember, you can also use watercolor pencils like this. You don't have to add water. Dip your paintbrush in your water, and then you just want to paint over that wash, and you can paint it in however you want. And I got a little more water right here, which lightened it up a little bit. So the next thing I want you to try is to do that same technique, but use 2 colors. Grab whatever 2 colors you want to use. You can choose colors that are next to each other, or you can choose colors that are opposite of each other. I'm just overlapping them a little bit, but you don't have to do that. Take your paintbrush, start on whichever side you want. I'm just going to start on the bottom. You see how nice and rich that color is. In these 2 squares, I'm going to show you how to create a gradated wash. So go ahead and choose one of your colors. I'm just going to choose this color since I have it. But as we move to the opposite side, we just press a little bit lighter. So this is how you create a gradated effect when you just use color pencil too. So I'm just not pressing as hard as I move to the right. Take your paintbrush, start on the left, and as I move to the right, I am getting a little bit more water on my brush and cleaning it up. And you can see we have this nice gradation from dark to light. Now we're going to do the same thing down here, but instead of drawing dark to light, I'm just going to draw a strip of color and then wash it over. So for this one, you just want to draw some color over on this corner. I'm pressing pretty hard. This is what I really love about watercolor pencils that would not work with normal watercolors. And then we just get some water on our brush and start painting in that area, and then we just move our paintbrush over. So really quickly we can create this nice gradated wash with these watercolor pencils. Okay, I'm going to choose these 2 ones to do where we add water first to our watercolor paper. In this technique, we are going to be using our sandpaper. So grab your sandpaper, make sure you have it ready. And what we're going to do is just paint water into this area, paint it into the area that you're going to be using, and then we're going to sand some color into it. And I'll show you 2 different ways to do this. Just get some water on your paintbrush, paint in that area as quickly as you can. You don't want it to dry, but you don't want a huge puddle of water on there either. As soon as you have some on there, grab your sandpaper and your watercolor pencil and just sand a little bit of it in. You can do as much or as little as you would like. Then let's move into this one, and I'm going to show you where you paint water on your paper, and then we're actually going to use our paintbrush over the top of what we have sanded into it. And it creates a really cool texture. Paint in whatever area you're going to use, and I'm going to use this area. Grab whatever color you're going to use, sand it into your water. You kind of have to be fast in this one because you don't want it to dry. And then you're going to take your brush. You could use a flat brush, I guess, for this. Smash it so you fan it out. And then you're just going to drag it across the top. So it almost is giving this the effect of like a birch tree or an aspen tree. We don't have to go in the same direction. But you can see we get like these nice knots and this really awesome texture when we do this effect. And in here, you can kind of see it does bleed and it kind of moves around. You can manipulate it a little bit if you want. You could even manipulate just the edges I'm just painting around the edges, and you can see it's still picking up that color that's on top. All right, in these two sections, I'm just going to show you what it looks like when you add watercolor pencil right onto your paintbrush. So I'm going to show you this with a flat brush and also with your round brush. So first, let's just go ahead and use our round brush since I've got mine ready. And I'm just going to draw some orange onto the tip. My paintbrush tip is orange, so you can't see quite as well. If you're not sure if you got enough on there, just touch it to your paper towel. You can see the color. Once you get that on there, go ahead and you can paint in an area, you could paint in some texture. I can even just fill it completely in with color just from adding it to the tip of my paintbrush. I really love how this works with the flat brush. Grab your flat brush, grab two colors, and make sure first dip your paintbrush in water or this doesn't work. Make sure it's wet, so it's kind of activating that watercolor pencil. And then what you want to do is take one color and draw on one side of your brush. And then take your other color and draw on the other side of your brush. So I'm just going to paint in this bottom square, and it creates a really nice grade 8 wash, so you can see those two colors next to each other. So that was just putting the two colors on my paintbrush, and if I would have put a little bit more color on it, I could make it darker. So that's two ways to do it. A flat brush with two colors. You could also use two colors on your round brush. So if you don't have a flat brush, try it with your round brush and see what it looks like. All right, this next technique, you are basically going to be using this as a palette. So this is where you are creating a watercolor pencil palette. Let me show you what mine looks like. This is what my big one looks like. And all I did was use my watercolor pencil and I just colored in these squares, pressing really hard, and then I just use this as my palette, so I can actually pick up colors straight from this and start painting. We'll just do 4 colors in here. Since I've been using 3 colors, I'm just gonna mix 2 of them for one of the colors. So you can make these circular, you can make these squares, but in one of your spaces, you want to create 4 different shapes filled in with your colored pencil. So I'm just gonna do some circles. On this palette, I didn't mix any of my colors, but this is kind of an experiment. I've never really done this before. So I'm just putting 2 colors right in this one. Use the paint that you've applied in these areas to paint in something in this area. So I'm just gonna do something where I'm starting light and kind of moving into a darker color, and then I might paint something over the top after it's dry. So get some water on your paintbrush, make sure you have a paper towel, and then use this as you would your watercolor palette. So I'm just dipping in orange, I'm gonna paint it, then I'm dipping in my violet color, adding it next to it, then I'm going to dip into this color that I made, and then into my blue. So you can create one of these, draw out squares or whatever shape. I think squares work really well, but you could do circles, whatever shape you want. Just make sure you have a space for each watercolor pencil, and then you just fill it in with that color, and you can use this later to paint in whatever you're trying to paint in. But if you run out of color, all you do is just grab that watercolor pencil and add more color over the top. Really quick, I just want to show you with this technique just how I can still use this petal and reactivate it. So this is dry now, so I'm just going to add like some birds or something to it. I don't know, kind of looks like a sunset. You can take your watercolor pencil right over the top of these. For example, let me just show you really quick. And this is another technique. This is layering. This is a bonus if you've watched this whole tutorial and you're still with me. This is dry, so I can actually add some color over the top of it. And I can just leave it like that. I can draw whatever I want, or I can paint it in and add this nice layer over the top. Watercolor pencils are really versatile, and honestly they are awesome to travel with, because all you really need to bring is this palette, and then this is all I need, and you can bring a water brush so you don't have to carry a container of water with you. And as you can see, you can get really nice vibrant colors just by using this palette that you've created on your own. After everything is dry, you can go ahead and remove your tape, and if it's helpful for you, you can use your pencil to write how you created that effect, so that later you can kind of use this sheet as a template or as a reference. When you're trying to remember how you created that gradated wash or how you created the aspen effect, you can look down here and kind of see how you did it. But it's totally up to you. So the first technique is where we draw with our watercolor pencil on our paper, and then we add water over it, and we can create a flat wash, we can create a gradated wash from one color to the next, and we can also create a dark to light effect really easily just by drawing a strip of color and then painting it over. The second technique is where we paint water on our paper and then we add watercolor pencil to it, and you can shave it into it, you can draw right into it, you can also shave into it and then take your paintbrush over the top to create this birch tree aspen effect or texture. The third thing you can do is add the watercolor pencil right to your paintbrush and then paint on your paper. And the fourth thing you can do is create your own watercolor pencil palette, where you draw your watercolor pencil onto a separate sheet of paper and you use those areas as your palette, and that's where you're picking up your color from. Some of you might watch these tutorials and think, this instructor at Mr. Otter Studio cannot count, because that is not 4 watercolor pencil techniques, it's like 9. Yeah, it is 9, but it really is based on the basic 4 that I use today, and there are many more than this. I hope you can use these techniques in your own watercolor paintings and your own illustrations. Thank you so much for painting with me. Have a wonderful day.